Hi, everybody. Welcome to NewsNite for Friday, September 16th. Great to have you along. The election day is now behind us. Were you surprised by the results? We'll go in depth. Also, Ohio's new congressional districts. 4 representatives for Summit County. Really? Those stories and more next on NewsNite. Mayor Don Plisquellic will get an opportunity to go after a 7th term as mayor. After he wins the Democratic primary, he'll now face off against Jennifer Hensel in November. Here to dissect the election and more, Steve Hoffman joins us from the Akron Beacon-Journal. Great to have with us freelance journalist and contributor Jody Miller this week, as well as Larry States from WAKR. Okay, the final numbers show a much greater turnout than we saw 4 years ago. A bigger divide between Mayor Plisquellic and his challenger, but still a 55-43 range. Not a blowout, not a landslide, but a decisive victory.
Definitely a decisive victory, I think, for the mayor. Not that Mike Williams didn't run a good campaign, but the interesting thing from my perspective was it was not quite as near, if I remember my numbers correctly, as 4 years ago when Joe Findley really almost surprised the mayor in the primary. I think in this particular case, the mayor's campaign staff took this campaign very seriously. They got out the vote. I think they ran an extraordinarily positive campaign looking back on it. Emphasizing what he has done for the city over the past 24 years, the growth the city has had, and the way the city is in a lot better shape than many urban areas in the state. And I think in a lot of respects, Mike Williams may have run more of a negative campaign,
How so?
Well, we need a kinder, gentler mayor. We need to, he was more critical.
Killing it with kindness?
Well, yeah, but I think he was more critical of the mayor. And I think rather he should possibly, and he will probably do this in 4 years because he said he was going to run again, emphasize far more strongly exactly what he would do more concretely.
Steve?
Yeah, I agree. I think Mike Williams tried to turn this campaign on style. His argument boiled down to essentially that a kinder, gentler, more inclusive leadership style would move the city forward. And I think the question for most voters became, okay, where exactly are we going? And the difficult economy, I think, for many incumbents, the difficult economy was not a good thing. Yeah. I think for Plisquellic, they were able to turn a difficult economy into a good thing because that level of uncertainty that's out there about the economy plays to his leadership style. You know what I can do. You can see what I've done. This is the course that I intend to pursue, and I think that worked pretty well. I think Plisquellic's victory is maybe not remarkable. 55% is very respectable, I think, under the circumstances. But you saw some incumbents lose in ward races, and arguably semi-upset, I guess, in
We'll
Ward
get
8.
to those in a minute and talk about that.
In light of those, I think the mayor, as an incumbent, did well. Bob Jeanette got beat in Barberton, the incumbent mayor of Barberton. So.
We'll see, Larry.
I also thought that the mayor spaced his news conferences out very judiciously during the campaign. Remember, he's a smart man. He's been in office for all these years, and it was by no coincidence that he scheduled 2 to 3 news conferences a week to announce either new jobs that were coming, the agreement with the Chinese, that was a big one, and then of course he saved the best for last with the new plant coming in, the biomedical plant coming in. He saved that till Friday, just before the election. So I think that he had a positive message about the fact, okay, I'm campaigning, but at the same time, there are new jobs being created in the city as I'm speaking to you now. And I think that people looked at that, and I agree with Steve that in uncertain economic times, they looked at his track record, what he's done. Personalities aside, okay? You look at the bottom line of what the man's done in the 20-plus years he's been in office. And I think they took a look at that, Akron voters, and said, you know what? We know he's a proven commodity. We know that he can, still do the job. We're looking at Youngstown. We're looking at Canton. We're looking at the cities around us. And we're saying, we're in a lot better shape than they are.
But to look at that strategy, Larry, that would seem to appeal to those that were undecided. Did we have undecided voters in the final weeks? Because I didn't get the impression. I get the impression people had made up their minds.
Well, I'll tell you what. I talked to some people who were going to the polls on Tuesday, and there were still some that didn't know how they were going to vote when they walked in there.
Really?
They were torn. Yeah, there was about maybe a third of the voters that I talked to that were a little bit torn, and they said, I'm not going to make my mind up until I go in there. And I said, really? And they said, yeah, I'm sort of torn, and who knows what decisions they made. Obviously, they made them more in favor of the incumbent. And I think they just felt more comfortable because of his track record. I don't think in uncertain economic times you try something new that's unproven. And I think that that's what they were looking at. Now, Mike Williams has been on council for a long time, but I think that, he doesn't have the track record that Mayor Plisquellic did in being able to create jobs. His connections in Washington, his connections nationally helped out as well, because, Akron's been somewhat insulated from, the real downdrafts that have happened in other cities.
The other thing, too, about the campaign is I think his campaign staff did a great job. He didn't implode. And there are a lot of times we all have dealt with a mayor when there will be something that will set him off, or there will be a circumstance or a situation that it will make the news. And in this particular instance, he did not implode, and I think that boded well for him.
We also had an independent expenditure group, a relatively new phenomenon in our politics, especially local. This has corporate money, a lot of corporate money, and wealthy individuals contributing for a committee that did not coordinate with the mayor's campaign, you understand, but was supportive of the mayor's campaign. And I think that helped in two ways. Obviously, it helped financially. It totally evaded the campaign finance limits, or what's left of them. The second thing it did, I believe, is it sent a signal to the voters of Akron. Right. When you saw that list of, the First Energies, the Goodyear, the Proenza,
University of Akron, right?
This signaled to me, anyway, that the business community and the academic leadership in Akron looked at Mike Williams, and they just didn't see very much.
But nevertheless, Mike Williams still got almost 10,000 votes in this primary election. What's his future?
Well, he says he's going to run again. He announced after getting 4 percentage points less than Joe Finley did 4 years ago. Finley got 47. Williams ended up with 43. He promptly announced this is a victory of sorts, and he's going to run again. Just real quickly, he's got a lot of work to do.
Well, not only that, but don't forget he's got 4 more years or he's got at least 2 more years on Akron City Council before he's going to be up for re-election as a councilman at large. So it will be very curious to see how the relationships and the dynamics of Akron City Council with Mike Williams, who has challenged the mayor, work in the next couple of years. Because we all know the mayor is not very kind to his opponents. And so it'll be curious to see how Mike Williams, holds himself out, what he does, what legislation he maybe initiates. Because one of the contentions against his campaign was he might have been there, but he really didn't initiate a whole lot.
Larry, can these two guys work together going forward?
I'll tell you what, I think that Mike Williams is going to be the loyal opposition. I really think he is. I think that he's going to set himself up as somebody saying, I'm going to be the check and balance on what the mayor wants to do. I think this has been his strategy all along. And I think he set himself up for 4 years from now. I really think during this election, I don't think he knew that I don't think he thought he could really win, but I think he's setting himself up for 4 years from now. There'll be a familiarity factor there in 4 years. Who knows what Mayor Plisquellic's going to do in 4 years? We don't know that. Right. So Mike Williams is lining himself up. That's why he says he's going to run again. He made that announcement right after he lost. But I think that's been his strategy all along.
Well, and don't forget, the other thing is, from now on, Mike Williams is not just Akron City Councilman at large. He's Mike Williams, formerly ran for mayor.
And an announced candidate for mayor. I think the challenge for Williams, and I understand that when you're on council, you don't necessarily have as big a bully pulpit as the mayor does. But I think the challenge for Michael Williams going forward is not to just oppose what the mayor is putting out there, but what's his plan? And for all the criticism Williams gave of Plisquellic for holding these press conferences every 5 minutes, it seemed like, Larry, Williams has his pulpit. He can introduce things as a councilman. Here's my plan, and he can hold press conferences.
Will he do that, though, more than he has in the past?
He better.
I think he'll have to.
Yeah, I agree. He better, or he's not going to be a viable candidate, because whoever runs against him, and I think there will be other people who run against him, if not Don Plisquellic in 4 more years, it would be somebody else that the Plisquellic camp would bring forward.
But for the betterment of the city, don't these two guys need to learn to get along? Because the last 5+ years, they've barely spoken.
Well, probably, but don't forget, you've got a situation where this city has not seen a great deal of problems because they didn't get along. This city has progressed forward, even with Mike Williams being opposition.
I want to talk about the phone call that wasn't made, as well as where Tom Sawyer was, as we shift this discussion now to NewsNite.net.
For more NewsNite content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at newsnight.net.
Some other election results to get to, especially those involving incumbents who didn't make it back to the ballot. A couple here in Akron City Council. You mentioned Mayor Jeanette in Barberton. Tough to be an incumbent in this economy.
I think so. I think, well, let me just quickly start with Bob Jeanette, because I think he's done a good job as Barberton mayor. Longtime council member. I think he had the courage to move forward on a number of initiatives in Barberton. There was this rental housing inspection issue that was very contentious. I thought that he did a good job. His challenger, a member of the storied Judge family of Barberton, I guess I didn't see this one coming. The young judge, who's also a member of council, worked very hard, apparently, and you know, people are upset with various issues. There are some local issues in Barberton, some flooding issues, but obviously Barberton, the economy, and people were apparently frustrated enough to turn Jeanette out. I think that's too bad.
Well, incumbents, I think, this year really, other than Mayor Plisqualik, really kind of were very, very vulnerable. Not only Mayor Jeanette in Barberton, but look at Akron City Council. Look at Tina Merletti. Look at Bob Otterman, who's been, I mean, there's been an Otterman on council since I think I've been alive. And that's a lot of years. But I mean, Tina is, that was the one that really shocked me, Tina Merletti. But, you know, it was a combination, I think, of events, and correct me if I'm wrong, that voters out there are not happy, incumbents are vulnerable. And if you as a politician take for granted that your name is going to get you on the ballot, you know, going to get you a win at the election box, that's not necessarily going to happen anymore. Tina Merletti's opponent pounded the pavement, you know, met people, went door to door, and I mean that was I think what made the difference.
Well, Donnie Kammer, I will give Donnie Kammer this. He was very active in the neighborhood, in a neighborhood group that he helped start, and I think that really helped him. I mean, that was the network that he used.
I live in that ward, and I noticed that he just really did. He had a really very strong door-to-door grassroots campaign. I think he out-campaigned Tina Merletti in just what I observed in the neighborhoods. Okay, plus he put up, you know, he had some nice billboards that he put up in that ward also, and you know, he's a bright young man. He really is, and I think that people were looking at this and saying Tina Merletti aligned herself very closely with the Plisqualik camp. Okay, a lot of people considered her basically tied to Plisqualik. Now, you know, I don't understand why, you know, with the mayor winning re-election by wide as margin as he did, why that didn't affect Tina Merletti. But I think it was just it was local issues in the ward, and I think that Donnie Kammer had a fresh approach, had a more of a grassroots approach, and you know, made things a bit different in the campaigning as far as getting more personal with people.
To a point, the Merletti camp, though, is crying foul, claiming that some of the things that Donnie said may not have been factual. Well, we don't have both sides here to debate it, but they were very surprised as well on election night. Otterman, though, that name is, you know, check the block, almost always, I should say almost always wins.
Yeah, Bob has been on the ballot in Ward 6, I think going back into the 60s. I think he first ran in like 1969. He was a high school counselor. I'll give Bob Hoke credit. This was his first race. It was Donnie Kammer's first race. And Hoke obviously was able to get out there and go door to door. That's what these ward races are about. Worked very hard, and it paid off. But I think some of this, Bob Otterman has never been a total ally of the mayor. That's for sure. But I do think Larry and Jody are certainly on the right track here. This is not a great time to be an incumbent, and I think, you know, some of that people want. You know, it's the old pledge when you're running at the ward level. I'll work harder for you, and that you know, that appears to have resonated. I mean, Bob's been around a long time. Maybe that turned into a little bit of a liability.
Looking ahead, there are many that thought if Linda Mobian does win Clerk of Courts in November, that either Otterman or Merletti would be the natural choice to backfill her spot as a councilman at large. Now they're both gone. It's as though that the playing field, Larry, has really shifted. Yeah,
it really has, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens when Donnie Kammer comes on board, Mr. Hoke wins when he comes on board, you know, how that's going to affect the chemistry of City Council, because these are newcomers, you know, they're not necessarily going to agree with the city's line on everything. And who knows what they're going to bring to the table. I think it's going to be very, very interesting, City Council, you know, coming up, and how the Plisqualik administration is going to interact with these people. And, of course, we all know that the big thorn in Plisqualik's side, Bruce Kilby, won again. So that irritant will be there for the mayor. There's no doubt about that. I was really surprised. I want to get back to the
We still have a general election, though. There are Republican candidates against these Democrats. Should say that.
Even though it's a very heavily Democratic area. But Bob Jeanette was a real shock to me. I thought that he had done an excellent job in Barberton. Getting the two college campuses there, Stark State College and the University of Akron, to set up satellite campuses there, I thought was really, really a big win for him. Mm-hmm. He also was doing some urban renewal downtown, fighting with the state over some property that used to be a former armory, trying to get that as an industrial park, industrial development. I think what really may have done Bob in was a local issue, was the flooding issue. I think that late in the year, that was something that has really frustrated Barberton residents for so long. Now, there's nothing.
Do you blame him for flooding?
Well, you can't wave a magic wand.
He's the one who's in office.
Exactly.
And he didn't fix it, so, you know.
Exactly.
That's the mentality. Well, that's the mentality, I think, of voters anymore.
And Bill Judge, you know, as I said, that Judge name in Barberton is big. And, you know, both Jeanette and Judge were veteran council people. They'd been there a long time on city council. They were well known, you know, throughout Barberton because of their council, you know, accomplishments. Right. And people, I think the flooding issue may have been what tipped the balance in Bill Judge's favor. He may have come to the table and said, I'll do more to try to do something about this.
We got a couple of minutes left in this segment, so I want to get to the GOP side of things. We had 22,000 Democratic primary voters. We only had 1,500 GOP. Does anybody stand a chance of making a dent from the GOP in the Akron elections in November?
No.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Well, they
Great
don't.
to have you along here.
I mean, you know, they don't. They really, really don't, unfortunately. The last viable Republican, at least on council, was John Frank. Yeah. You know, and that was, what, 12, 14 years ago?
I think what you've seen is a very conscious decision by Alex Arsenkopf and the Republican organization to put their money and resources elsewhere. And they just don't think they can win.
But we have seen Republicans who get positions as judges on the Akron Municipal Bench. Of course, that encompasses a little more than just the city.
And it's also nonpartisan in the general.
And nonpartisan. But why is the R such a kiss of death on the Akron ballot?
It's just the demographics. I think, you know, Ward 8 is not what it used to be. Ward 1 is not what it used to be. The territory is, the demographics have shifted. There's been growth in the suburbs, and that's kind of the way it is. I would argue that, you know, it's a good idea to make a stab at it. You never know if you could win 1 or 2 seats, you could begin building. Now you have this, you know, Jennifer Hensel running for mayor, bright young attorney, but has never run before.
One with 1,000 votes.
And why, you know, wouldn't it be better? I mean, she's going to be cannon fodder for Plisquellic, but wouldn't it be better, arguably, to have someone like that, you know, win a ward race, or, you know, and then maybe even try at large and then run for mayor? Then you know, then she'd have maybe
a lot more name recognition on the ballot.
Yeah.
So one other thing I did want to talk about is the race that surprised me also was in Ward 8. There was a primary race for who would in fact take that seat or run in the Democratic seat. It was an open seat, and I really thought Jim Hardy was going to win, but Marilyn Keith just surprised the heck out of me. This is Bob Keith's wife. She's well known in the ward. She is is a school teacher now. She's going to be retiring. Mm-hmm. Bob Keith left that seat and is now clerk of council, and it was very interesting to me because Jim Hardy, he gave up a seat on the Akron School Board to run for Ward 8. So I hope he continues to stay involved in politics because he's one of the good guys.
I want to let you weigh in on that as we shift the conversation now to NewsNite.net.
On NewsNite.net, we cover a broader range of topics than we can on the air in 27 minutes. Be part of the conversation on our Facebook page and at NewsNite.net.
It's 2011. Do you know who your congressman is? You need to check the map and see where things are going. Guys, the new map comes out this week, of at least the proposal. Democrats hate it. Republicans love it. Summit County carved up like a cheeseburger spread out amongst Kate plus 8 there.
It's unbelievable. I've been through this process. Happens after each census. This is the third go-around. We all have seen gerrymanders. This is the worst.
This is the mother of gerrymandering.
This is the worst I've seen. In broad brush, before we talk about Summit County, in broad brush, what you have is a state that is pretty evenly divided in statewide elections. Very competitive state. You have these districts configured in such a way that you have 4 districts that a Democrat can win. The partisan index, people have calculated, pretty safe seats for Democrats. 4 out of 16. The other 12 are pretty much a lock for Republicans. They have a voting index, a Republican voting index of 54, some are even higher. So this is, I think the Republicans in Columbus, when they drew this map, had 2 goals, and they met both of them. One is, how can we help our guys a lot, and how can we screw the other guys really bad? And I think they accomplished both of those goals. It's outrageous. Summit County split into 4 different districts will likely have no representation from within the county. We'll be represented by Marcia Fudge in Cleveland, Tim Ryan,
Steve LaTourette, and Jim Renacci.
So Betty Sutton.
Well, her district has literally gone, because if she wants to run again, she's got to run in Jim Renacci's district. It's absolutely unbelievable to me. But what also has to be said here is that Republicans they've done nothing illegal. All of this is perfectly, within the boundaries. Okay, it may be immoral, it may be unethical, but it is perfectly legal. But let's go back to last year, when the Democrats had an opportunity through Bob Husted, John Husted, to change the way they did the apportionment of all the districts. He proposed they do a bipartisan commission, and you know what? The Democrats said no. They thought they were going to win the governor's seat. They thought they were going to keep probably the auditor state. They thought they were going to have the majority of the seats on the apportionment board, and
So they were still riding the Obama wave.
They were riding the Obama wave, and they literally... they rolled the dice and they lost. Yeah. They really lost.
Just to clarify, just real quickly, the legislative districts are done by a special board called the Apportionment Board. But to clarify, the congressional districts go through the legislature as a bill and is signed by the governor. So 2 different processes. The Republicans control everything anyway.
Right.
I'd think it very, very interesting if Betty Sutton did decide to run against Jim Renacci, because I still think there's a Democratic base that she could still draw from. I think it could be a very interesting race. I would like to see that, because I think that would be a really good test to see whether the Republicans really got it right. If you look at the divisions, it looks in their favor, but you got to remember there's still a very strong Democratic base in parts where Betty Sutton could exploit that. So we'll have to see if she decides to run again.
There will, to Jody's point, the rules saying the Republicans are within the legal parameters of congressional redistricting is fine. They probably are. There will be court suits. There will be lawsuits on this, almost certainly. But the rules are so loose. And one of the things that Speaker Batchelder from Medina was harping on the other day is this creation of this minority-majority district for Marcia Fudge that snakes all the way down into the minority wards of Akron. So it's like a barbell district. It's ridiculous. He claimed, the Voting Rights Act requires us to do this. Well, they wanted to get to 51%. They wanted to give Marcia Fudge a 51%, a district where 51% of the voting age population was African American. There is no number like that in the Voting Rights Act whatsoever. It's Bill Batchelder's interpretation of the Voting Rights Act, which gives him an excuse to pack Democrats into a district which creates territory that's good for Renacci and others. Sure. And this Renacci district is ridiculous. It wanders all over the place. It used to be an east-west district. Now it's kind of a north-south district, and it snakes. It kind of snakes over to the east. It's ridiculous.
I don't understand it. I mean, on the west side, there's 4 districts in Summit County now, and I run through 3 of them when I jog in the morning. I jog a 4-mile loop, and I go through 3 different congressional districts. A city the size of Akron, shouldn't it have at least one Summit County voice?
You would think.
In Washington?
You would think. And you would think that there would be somebody from Summit County who could represent, the county. But no way.
On the flip side, though, had the Democrats won the seat, maintain control, wouldn't they be guilty of probably leaning things in their way, too?
Absolutely. If they could.
I think it's a known fact that whatever party's in power is they're going to manipulate that, redistricting in their favor. It's happened. It's throughout history. When the Democrats win, the Democrats do it. When the Republicans win, they do it. It's a tool they use to try to get the edge.
And it is cyclical, okay? Yeah. And I would like to say one thing, and then you can talk. I think the voters in the state of Ohio have not been served well by this. And I think if anything should go either in a court case or on the ballot, I think that we should be we wish the citizens of Ohio would do a referendum like they did last year in California, where you take the redistricting out of the hands of the politicians, and you work with a bipartisan commission, an independent panel, and you do it in a way. I love the map, for example. I love the map of, who was it, the Indiana representative? When they had the contest out there, the Illinois representative who came back and created a map that really was viable and valid.
The point here, I think, is that, yes, this was cyclical. This, to me, is extreme. This is going to the nth degree. And you get two problems. One is that we've alluded to. You get communities of interest that are just shattered. And this is how people identify with their politics. They identify with their city, with their county, with their subdivision, and now they're fractured. They don't have an identity. And we have people from outside of our area. Yeah, they're going to give a nod to Akron and Summit County, but it's not really a big enough part of their district to be decisive. The second thing is, when you push these partisan indices, if you will, when you get districts that are safe Democrat, safe Republican, you get people that move to the extreme of their own party. They're worried about the primary. They don't care about the general. So they become ideological, they become rigid, they don't want to compromise. They go to Washington and they contribute, as I would argue, they contribute to gridlock. And then the voters are terribly frustrated. Like in Ohio, you have a close presidential election, but you're going to have a Congress that's representatives of Congress that are Republican.
Inside of 1 minute. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, I think that I agree with Steve, though. This is just, it's ridiculous, and it's obvious. That's the whole thing. It's very obvious. And if I were living in as we're living here in Summit County, you're right. We have somebody from, over near Youngstown who's representing us from one district. We have somebody up north who's, representing us in the northern part of the county who's representing this area from another district. And, you have somebody in Medina County who's representing part of it like this. So, all these people, actually their home bases in other counties, we don't really have a Summit County-based as part of this district redraw, we don't have a Summit County-based representative anymore. Right. So, that we should feel cheated because, our destiny is being decided by people all around us, but not here.
And come January of 2013, the Summit County executive will have to call 4 different people when he has an issue, or she, in Washington. Larry, Jody, Steve, thanks for being with us. Thanks for being with us as well. Next week, we'll talk more about what's going on with the U.S. Postal Service, just getting our arms around this big change coming to the area. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next Friday for Newsnight. Good night.